How are you, mate?
I am great. How are you doing?
Good. Good.
Good.
It's
Hey,
been a long time in the making.
it has been. I appreciate your patience, man. It's been a journey to get here, hasn't it, buddy?
Well, I appreciate your patience to set up this date because I know that for a few months there, things have been really, challenging for me geographically. So and with my schedule. So I appreciate your patience and
No, just
the,
just they're very excited. I have so many questions. Let me start with the easy one first. Why is everything in Australia trying to kill you?
Are we rolling?
Yeah, yeah, we're going, man.
We're going. Look. My wife is from Spain, and I just moved back here a year ago, and her and my two sons, who are American, had never been here, and yeah, there's a lot of hype about everything here trying to kill you, and she was like, okay, I understand it's not really gonna be like that, but she's like, it is like that.
It kind of is, isn't it? Yeah. I have a friend of mine that lived in Australia for many, many years and moved stateside. And we used to talk a lot about the different, animal life and things that you would encounter there because it's very different than here.
It's not just the animal life, like the wild animal life; it's the human animal life as well.
Yeah, them
Like
too, huh?
Australians are a kind of wild bunch, and I don't know. It's something to do with because I traveled a lot between this Australia and America. Since really late '80s. But it wasn't until I was flying, and also Spain. Well, I've been from Spain, but it wasn't until I was flying from Spain to Australia across the Middle East that I realized how far away Australia really is.
It's pretty damn far.
It's like another world.
It really is.
We're so geographically isolated. It's like its own world, and so I think that has something to do with Australians have like a disproportionate amount of successful artists, musicians, actors, sportsmen for our population.
That's
And I
absolutely
think
true.
it's to do with I believe it's to do with that isolation and the fact that we are very competitive, and it's like we're trying to succeed in our own world, and so then it's, I guess, a great training ground for the rest of the world.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, the first real connection I guess I had to Australia was a musical artist I liked when I was young. You might know him. His name's Rick Springfield. And he was super big in the 80s, right? And so that's when I was a kid. And so, I knew he was from Australia. And so that was always of interest to me. Yeah, it's kind of a funny world, isn't it?
He doesn't get as much credit as being Australian that you might think. I do remember hearing that he was from Australia,
Yeah.
but when when the top, the hit of, you've got ACDC, in excess.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Yeah. So many.
there's so many of those big ones that kind of are at the top that a lot of others kind of
No, he's little fish compared to the big fish that have come out of Australia. I promise you. So, Jason, let me ask you this. I mean,
Jesse's Girl. That's not Jesse's
oh,
Girl.
of course, that's a seminal
We
song.
used to laugh about that. We used to laugh about that song, like in the writers' room of Wilfred. Actually, we sort of talk about Jesse's Girl. It's like, yeah, but this guy, he's obsessed with Jesse's Girl, but just doesn't seem to have a name. It's like he doesn't even know her name. How
Right.
obsessed can
No,
Jesse's?
it's just a big codependent song about a dude skeeving on his friend's girl. I mean, it's not really a polite song at all. But listen, I have to ask you, man. Getting into more in the meat of this, man, what a great character. It's so difficult to break through the clutter and to create a unique character that no one has done, no one has seen, no one's really, experienced before. And somehow, some way, you came out with a character that was so rich and so dynamic and had so much depth to it that it spanned both Australia and here. How did you even come up with the concept of the character?
Well, it was a short film first, 7-minute short film. I remember showing one of my mates the very first cut of the 7-minute short film, And he said, it's just you in a dog suit. Like he just thought that was me. Right. So
Right.
and then over time it grew into something else. As a stage actor, and I played Hamlet when I was 22. As a stage actor, I was really, I guess, a writer in an actor's body. I would create these kind of detailed, very rich characters when I was on stage, and I actually had done like 10 years of sort of soul-destroying children's theatre, where I would be doing 3 shows a day during the school terms, $30 a show. I was doing 20 shows, and I was in all sorts. I was a duck in this one, I was a fox in this one, the big bad wolf here. I was in all these different animal suits, and
Right.
I smoking cigarettes in between, or getting high up in the up on the roof of the theatre.
Right.
And that really did inform the look of Wilfred. I when I eventually quit that job, I made a promise to myself never to get in another animal suit again,
because you were done.
So
Yeah.
when Adam and I came up with the concept of Wilfred, just as a 7-minute short film, we thought we'll shoot over the weekend. I said, "Oh, look, I don't really want to get in one of those animal suits again, but it's 2 days. So yeah, I'll do it on the weekend and we'll shoot it." And so we shot it. Now that was 2002. 23 years later, I'm still getting in this damn dog suit.
Right.
But over the years, my love-hate relationship with Wilfred has kind of turned into this sort of something that I have a lot of gratitude for.
Sure.
But just to put a button on to answer the question, it was it was in a lot of the frustration of Wilfred being trapped in this dog's body. Because in the Australian Wilfred in particular, he was like in love with his owner in a way, and that's kind of a very masculine kind of way, because I'd noticed that a lot of pets of the opposite sex do tend to have more of a sort of a romantic attachment to their to owners they've got of the opposite sex.
A little obsessive, yeah.
I wanted to have that kind of like she's mine thing, and so that did that a lot of his frustration of being trapped in this dog's body was also, came from me being trapped in this sweet dog suit that was, not very, glamorous.
Right. So you use it as a sort of a motivator for yourself. The hate fueled you in a way.
Yeah, and when I actually went to Hollywood, and they, he had a mini makeover. Wilfred had these like Wilfred feet that were kind of like Snoopy feet that I didn't have in the Australian version. I had a new dog suit that they modeled on the Australian one. And they did ask me, they said, "Look, this is going to be very hot in this. Would you like, we can get some air conditioning in there?" And I said, no, I've got to be miserable.
It won't work if I'm not miserable.
Yeah. So I did definitely,
I can kind of see that almost in a character actor style way,
What is it? What is it when I call it, buddy? De Niro and stuff. Method actor.
Yeah, that's right. Well, doing that, what to me stands out, Jason, about that versus other acting is you have to have a certain disregard for what anyone thinks. You have to be a certain amount of fearless, because you're doing something that on the surface seems ridiculous, but in context is brilliant. And that sometimes is hard to portray. Because you have to have full faith in what you're doing and the work you're doing to believe in it,
Thank you for that observation, because it's not something that many people really do consider, because it is 100% true. I remember reading years ago, Barry Humphries, I don't know if he was that successful in America, but he had a character, Dame Edna Everidge, and he said in his autobiography, he said, if you don't feel funny, you won't be funny. And that you also have to trust, I knew by then, you have to trust your own instincts as a comedy writer, actor. And so I still remember shooting the very first short film of Wilfred, and we were shooting it as you do, out of order. You shoot it in, and so on that first weekend, I was there. There was all this crew that were being, paid $50 or doing it for a favor or whatever. There was all this professional crew there, and the director was a big ag director, and I didn't know any of these people, and they didn't know, none of them knew me. And I was sitting on a set in the dog suit with a bong, and I could see the crew looking at me like, again, I was shooting a scene out of context. It wasn't all in the first scene.
Right.
And I can see them looking at me with a certain amount of skepticism of like, I hope you know what you're doing, because this doesn't, it's not
adding up. Yeah.
And I just had to have faith in what I was doing was right, you know, and it did take a lot of bravery. And for someone that does struggle with major anxiety, that was an internal battle. But it's a battle, you know, it's a confidence that I had brought with me from years of being a stage actor, but I knew I just had to stand firm to it. In actual fact, I had a fight with the director after that first scene, and he was we hadn't worked together before, and he was sort of he was pissed off that I wasn't doing it at a certain level, and I knew that his background was in ads, 30-second ads, and I was trying to explain to him that in the context of the overall performance, the tone that I was giving was the right tone. You can't sell everything in the one frame or the one scene. So and then we had it out, and a big battle about it, and then we all had something to eat, and then we continued shooting, and then he was like, "Oh, it's totally wrong."
Yeah, he understood there's a nuance to the performance. That there are nuances. It's not a monotone performance.
Well, another thing, it happened again when I was on the Wilfred set in America, and I remember David Zuckerman, who you know definitely had his own a lot of experience. You know, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He developed Family Guy, but I remember there being one scene where we do a walkthrough with as a dress rehearsal out of costume, and then they'd set up the lights, and then we'd go away, and then we'd come back and shoot the scene. We'd do a read through, a walkthrough, and basically block the scene.
Kind of block it out, yeah.
Yeah, so I was blocking it out and sort of doing it and a bit of business. And Zuckerman came over. He said, "No, I think this is wrong. You're doing that wrong. It shouldn't be like that." And I said, "Look, you've got to trust me on this." And he said, "No, it's got to be like this. He shouldn't be like this." I said, "Mate," I said, "would you walk up the chaplain and tell Chaplin in between scenes how he should be doing physical comedy?" I said, "Well, basically, you're talking to Chaplin, right? So don't, you know, you trust me that when the dog suit's on, I know exactly what I'm doing." And so then I went away, put the suit on, did it, and he came up to me and he said, "I'm 100% wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to challenge you on." Not to say that I don't like to be challenged on things. I'm always open to that power of collaboration. But when it comes to the world of physical comedy, that I'd come from, that physical comedy from the theatre, I knew that I was bringing to it a kind of a Chaplin-esque kind of wealth of experience, that I knew that when it comes to me in that dog suit, I kind of knew what I was doing.
Well, not only, you know, did you have the experience in the physical comedy, but you gave birth to the character. You intimately, of anyone, know the character better than anyone from the outside could ever observe. And so those nuances are in part and parcel you're the nuance, you know?
Thanks. Yeah. Yes.
So, you know, in playing that role, was it more or less fun doing Australian versus American? Is it just different? I mean, how did those two play out against one another?
It was night and day. Overall, I was very miserable during the Australian version. And I had actually created another show and another character for another network that I much more enjoyed over here. And so I had, after shooting 2 seasons of the Australian version, you know, there wasn't a very harmonious set either. So we'd all kind of decided Wilfred was done.
It was done, yeah.
And then, he was done. And then I had gone to America, secured a really good agent and manager in Hollywood. I'd showed them both shows that I did, but we were going to go with from a format sense, we were going to go with the other show. And then one day my then manager called me up and he said, "I know you don't want to play the dog again. So I'm not getting the fucking dog suit again." He said, "But I think," and that was when he said to me, "I think this could be your Mork and Mindy." He said, "I think this could be like the alien, the dog. Even if the show's not a huge hit, you know, you probably can walk into any room in Hollywood after it. Everyone's going to remember you."
Right. It's going to afford you a certain credibility going forward in the world. Yeah.
it stands out. You know, you're
Yeah.
always going to remember the guy that had the balls getting the dog suit.
Yeah, right.
Right. So, and so I said, if you can sell it, I'll do it. He sold it. I did it. And then it was season 2 of Wilfred we were writing, and then Robin Williams reached out to me via Elijah, and he was a fan of the show and a fan of mine. You know, I was very honored to, and he'd offered to be on the show. And that was when Robin Williams came on and played a guest role, and it was his first acting role in a television series since Mork and Mindy.
Wow. You know,
so it was very, very celestial, very amazing.
Well, let's talk about that, because I have to imagine from, you know, a thespian, B, a writer, and C, a comedian, that getting notified that, hey, Robin Williams not only is a fan, but he'd like to work with you on your show. I mean, that must be one of those magical moments where you just go, is this my life?
It is. And, you know, unfortunately, so much time has passed since Robin has gone. Like, it was like, you know, I connected with him. We became good friends in a short time. And the window of when I knew him was so short, so small. And, you know, there's just no way of knowing that. But it definitely was the most validating experience of my career, and there's been a few, but that was the most validating.
I can't imagine anything could be much more validating. Just, you know, I grew up and I saw him when he appeared on Happy Days for the first time, and then Mork and Mindy, and of course his entire career, you know, and he was transcendent in almost everything that he did. His stand-up, among the most brilliant ever, you know. He was just a tour de force of performance and of brilliance. And so that had to just be a wonderful, wonderful experience, and even more rewarding that at least for some period of time you got to call him friend and maybe, you know, gain some little bit of dust from him that fell onto you.
Definitely. I remember when he passed, you know, being devastated, of course, and I was developing a series for him when he passed.
Wow.
And the morning that he passed, you know, everyone was from the show was posting photos of them, selfies with him from the set. And my wife, hang on a second.
Okay.
Sorry, I just started turning into a storm here, and then the door was slammed shut. So yeah, the morning that he passed, the day he passed, people were posting these photos of them and Robin. And my wife, who's, you know, quite a few years my junior, she said, "Did you get a photo with him?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And she was like, "You idiot! What are you thinking?" You know, she just didn't really get. I said, "No, you don't understand. You know, when it comes to very famous people at that kind of level, it's kind of like it's an honor. You give them a break from that.
Yeah, no, you don't make them be the star. Just let them be who they are."
Yeah, and so I said, it's hard to explain, but it's sort of like something that I don't do with people at that kind of level. But afterwards, I must admit, I was kind of feeling like, gee, I am an idiot. Like, why don't I just get a photo with him? I don't have that kind of to validate it. But then it was about a year after he was passed, someone from the show posted on Facebook a promotional video that he took that I had never seen before, that it was promoting for the series. And it was like an interview situation when he was on set. And he was talking about me. And he was talking about when he would watch the show on TV and look into my eyes, and kind of by looking into my eyes, he was kind of brought into this character in this profound way. And it was such a, like, I don't know, like a almost love letter from the other side.
Right.
Like, I'm so glad I didn't get that photo. I'm so, like, that was my moment there.
That's much better than any picture.
Recently said that they saw, I don't know where it is, but someone said they saw an actor's studio type interview where he did not long after Wilfred, and he was talking about me specifically. So I'd love to see that. But,
wow, that's amazing. That's what a great feather. Yeah. So, you know, what I know that you've got this documentary that you've been you're putting together, and I'm really excited to hear more about this journey in your documentary film, and your CBD journey and how all of this materialized. Tell me more about that.
Well, there is this like connection too, Robin, with this documentary. It's pretty expansive, this project, so I've got to try to think about the best entry point in. The film's called The Cannabis Code, sort of borrowing from the Da Vinci Code in a sense that there is a kind of a potentially conspiratorial thing that I am trying to discover. It's been 10 years in development, and it's about the mysteries, hidden histories, and possible celestial genesis of the cannabis plant. And it really does trace into a lot of ancient religions, cultures that used cannabis as an entheogen, as part of a ceremonial connection to a god or a higher power. And this extra thing that cannabis has, that having been someone who has, I lost my best friend to suicide 15 years ago. I've had suicide ideation myself for many years, my own depression that I'd battled and overcome in sobriety and rehab. And so then Robin, and of course losing Robin. So to me, I find that with depression, as it's labeled, for me, it's like a soul pain. It isn't so much, I don't subscribe necessarily to it being a chemical imbalance as explained by the pharmaceutical companies. And I believe that cannabis does have something spiritual about it that cannot be defined by biology and science. So I've spent 10 years in development this film and hopefully spin-off series, digging into these hidden histories and it does even trace back to, there's a lot of ancient connection to extraterrestrial beings, extra dimensional beings, that there's a tribe in North Africa called the Dogon tribe, who in their telling of history, extraterrestrial beings from the Sirius star system brought cannabis and gave it, among other, did other things as well, but gave it to early humans as a gift to expand our consciousness. And so when you look at the Dogon, their understanding of astronomy, it was like they knew that there was the Sirius star system was a dual star system way before modern telescopes and science could prove them correct. Also, their way of maintaining their history telling, I think, is a far more reliable method than ours, for instance. So this is all sort of stuff that I am, we've started shooting, and we're going to be going all around the globe in a sense. It's a bit like Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown.
Gotcha.
It's also a bit like Ancient Aliens, and it's also a bit like Carl Sagan's The Cosmos.
It sounds pretty fascinating, and I know that we talk about a lot of things of otherworldly nature and so forth, just in conversation on my program, and I think that maybe just theoretically that perhaps while that the cultures that existed before us may not have used the exact same technology we do, I think there may have been cultures as advanced as we are with different technology and different connections to the universe around us, and
far more advanced. And that's what I think is coming out now. I think it's one of the reasons why TikTok's about to be banned, but I think that there's so much information coming out about the true nature of just pretty much how we've been lied to about everything, mate.
Everything, man. Listen, we just had a conversation today about how the food, we have something here. I don't know that they do in Australia, but called the food pyramid. And the food pyramid was the recommended dietary guidelines. It's an absolute farce. It's horrible. It's a crime that was perpetrated on people, So yeah, we're all discovering that maybe some things have been pulled over our eyes over the years.
Just leading back to the cannabis versus pharmaceutical antidepressants. I mean, it came out that they came clean. Big Pharma came clean a couple of years ago and said that the whole chemical imbalance theory, which was serotonin related, it's a chemical imbalance, and we're going to balance the imbalance with taking these drugs. It was a marketing campaign. It was a slogan. It was not based on any kind of fact. Yet still 80% of people, when questioned, still think that it's because of chemical imbalance, and doctors are still prescribing pharmaceutical antidepressants with the advice that it's a chemical imbalance. And even though they came clean about the genesis of that marketing campaign and that it wasn't based in fact, that made no effort to re-educate society.
No.
And then meanwhile, you've got this plant medicine, proven life-saving, fundamental plant medicine that's still being constantly demonized, stigmatized, and then when you add the industrial hemp element as well, we've got this plant that can really literally save our planet, save humanity, and that's a big part behind the show is the suicide epidemic, and just that I believe and have for a long time that there's this, my pain comes from the soul pain. It comes from a disconnection, and that the highest rate, the biggest cause of death in Australia, ages 15 to 44, is suicide. Where my wife's from, in Spain, it's motor accidents. So you've got these two different cultures. That you've got a culture that people want to get out of here so much they're willing to kill themselves to get out. There's so much pain, and I think that what happened was, with the failure of organized religion, it's left this where people used to sort of devote themselves to and have this higher connection to something greater. It's left this hole in everyone's souls, and out of despair, they just need to escape the pain. And so I hope to inspire people in a way that, say Carl Sagan's The Cosmos did, as opposed to Degrassi's version of The Cosmos, which I found very didactic, condescending, and lecturing. Carl Sagan, who actually coincidentally also spoke about the spirituality of cannabis, and he's one of the only other people I've ever read has done that. But I used to go and read and watch his show, even though it was in the late 80s, his 70s show at the public library. I'd get high and I'd watch it, and it just filled me with inspiration and excitement and wonder. And the nature of that show was it was a journey of discovery, right? And so that's what I'm trying to do with this show. I'm trying to inspire people. I'm not trying to say it's one thing or the other. I do want to call out the Big Pharma, but also I'm the whole extraterrestrial thing for me is I've been an ancient astronaut theory for most of my life, and in 1998 I actually had a direct encounter with extraterrestrial, I believe subterrestrial, but definitely interdimensional beings, right? Where I felt like I was actually almost killed or abducted, and it was a situation that definitely shaped my life, and I spent the next 20 years of my life trying to find out what these things were. So I became very, very knowledgeable about extraterrestrial, the Anunnaki and everything, because I was specifically trying to find these particular beings that I encountered, and I never really did find out. So that's why when I read about, the Dogon tribes saying that cannabis was brought here by extraterrestrials, for me it was absolutely no stretch of the imagination, because I've had direct relations with interdimensional, subterrestrial, extraterrestrial beings. So that is, and I make no secret of that in the show. I come out from the front. This is where I'm coming from. But the show is very science. I look for the scientific answer for everything.
It sounds like
stuff.
It sounds like a really good recipe for a very fascinating program. It hits all the buttons that I'm interested in as a viewer. And I do think that's interesting. You're talking about Big Pharma, and I do think that I think people are finally starting to wake up, but there's a lot of work to do. We've called Alzheimer's a memory disease for a long time, but the truth is, and everybody knows now, it's really diabetes type 3. That's what causes Alzheimer's.
I know.
A lot of it is genetic, and so these these antidepressants, for example, it really has nothing to do with serotonin in that regard. All that does is try to level out a little bit, but that's stupid. It doesn't address the issue. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about what the real issues are, not what they tell you the issue is.
Yeah. You know, you know, every second day, someone reaches out to me, some fan that says, thank you. You know, some people say, oh, actually just show and character saved their life. But many people like, you got me through the grief of the death of my father or the death of my dog, or you got me through the hardest part of my life. And so I've just got to plug this computer. I'm sorry again.
No, you're good. You're just fine, man. You're just fine.
I don't want to run out of batteries.
All right. Good enough. Good enough.
So, yeah, like I remember kind of deciding when I was in the bloody 90s and I was dealing with chronic depression then, and I have for most of my life, deciding that God had made a decision that I was meant to live my life in a state of constant, perpetual suffering so that I may help heal other people's suffering with my comedy, right? And my creative voice, which was sort of a lot to carry on my shoulders as a guy in his his 20s, but it's the only thing that made sense to me. And honestly, now at age 53, I don't really feel that much differently. I think that maybe I was kind of close to it, and I feel that, like, I heard someone say that only broken people can really heal other broken people. And when I spent some time in rehab in Tennessee, there in Nashville, not far from you, you'd notice that the people that were in there with with those patients are former addicts. They're all people that have done it. Because they're the only people that really have that understanding, that compassion.
My father, I somewhat understand what you're saying, because my father, when he passed away, he was 34 years sober. And he spent his entire life, every day of his life, the rest of his life, keeping himself sober simply by helping others to obtain sobriety. That was his entire mission in life, and so I watched him, throughout my life, regardless of how he was a dad or anything else, just as a human being dealing with his own, negatives and using it as a positive to help others. And so I do understand. I've seen that journey in a man before, and it's a powerful journey. It's a powerful thing. And you are right. If you haven't been there, you can't help. If you don't know how it's cooked, you can't tell them the recipe.
Yeah. So I've felt ever since I was a young boy, and part of what I did deal with in that treatment center, what it did focus on early childhood trauma and PTSD, and so in those difficult years, in those sort of late adolescent, early teen years for me, was very introspective, very deep thinker. I spent a lot of time in isolation, a lot of time in hiding. And in that time, I did hear a voice that did send me on a calling of sorts, and I felt that when I did Wilfred, that was the call. Like, I felt, okay, this was what that voice was telling me that I was going to do when I was 12 years old. But now that I'm doing what I'm doing, I feel that this was it. Like, that Wilfred was the way that I enter it. Like, Wilfred has become unintentionally this cannabis cult figure. And now this, and also dealing with the mental health stuff that, going back to your question earlier about the different versions of Australia and America, there was none of that in the Australian version. It was just all about the comedy.
Right.
Then when we did the American version, suddenly it became a show about mental health.
Yes.
And then it was unintentional, but so many things in life seem unintentional.
But in a manner of speaking, it's like you did the pre-work and you created your own gate into the next chapter. Your character has been leveraged to bring people to the message that you really want to deliver.
Yeah.
That's a great conduit. I mean, I get that there had to be moments where you never wanted to put that thing on again. You never wanted to see it again. Never wanted to hear the name Wilfred again. Probably drove you crazy. You probably felt pigeonholed, you felt typecast. You felt stuck at times. But now I think on the other side of that, I look at, how it prepared you for what you're doing now and how it set the table for all the people who are going to come and see what you're doing now. And that's a cool thing, really,
Yeah, it was. Thank you. There was a specific moment that always I was aware of when it happened. I mentioned before to you and to was Garrett?
Gunner. Yeah.
That I spent some time in rehab in between the pilot and the series, shooting the series. And when I came out, I was pretty newly sober, so had a lot of intense anxiety. There was this whole feeling, as you said, about the bravery of like, I was one thing to make a fool of myself in Australia, but now I'm about to make a fool of myself in front of the whole world. I was kind of terrified.
I bet.
That what I'd signed up for. And I went, and I had also made a decision years ago, I didn't want to get in one of those suits again. And now here I am signed on for 6 years. And so I turned up on the very first day of the promotional shooting, and it's the famous shot of when Wilfred, if you Google Wilfred photos, his images come out the window. I'm yelling at someone out of the car window. And I turned up that morning, and I was in this beautiful trailer, and I saw the dog suit hanging up there, and it just filled me full of dread. And I thought, I don't want to get in that dog suit again once. How do I do this for 6 years, 13 episodes? How do I do this? I thought, can I just get in my car and drive across America and just not do it? Like, what can I do here? And I'd recently had that spiritual awakening in Tennessee, and I got down on my knees and I said out loud, God, please help me find a way to love this.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happened at the time. They knocked on the door. Jason, time to go. I went out there, and as I'm walking through the crowd, the crew all like, hey, Wilfred. But I'm just like filled with anxiety and suffering. I'm like, I shoot the first setup. And as they say, okay, Jason, you can go and take 5 minutes, half an hour, we'll call you for the next setup. This guy comes up to me. We're on Venice Beach, and he was an Australian guy. I think I'd seen him in the background. He came up to me and he said, mate, he said, I had no idea you're over here. He said, I'm over here on holidays on Venice. I walked down, I see you here in the car. Mate, you keep going. You make a lot of people happy. You keep going. And I went, that's the answer.
That was it.
That's me. This is the way I love this.
Yeah.
Is remember the people that I'm doing this for. So every time I was shooting that thing, and I would be in between scenes, sometimes I ripped that bloody head off and I'd throw it to get this thing off.
Yeah.
But every time I'd put it on again, I'd be like, this is for them. And now they are the ones that put food on my family's table now.
Right.
The cannabis. They're the ones that are like coming out and like saying, yeah, they're buying my stuff at, in times when I need this. So it was a really, it was a spiritual experience.
Yeah. It's always hard to see forward, but much easier to see backwards, isn't it? And when you begin to unpack it and you look at all of the components together and you go, man, there was a map here. I just didn't know it. There was a map. I just wasn't aware I was following it.
Right.
But you were. Yeah. And you still are. And that's the great thing. You're still following the map now. And except now you're more cognizant, you're more aware, you're more determined, you're more seasoned, you're wiser, and you have something of substance you want to share. And that's awesome. That's great. That is great, man.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny, this relationship you have with an audience. Like I knew from my theatre days, there it's instant. You'd have this relationship and you feel them, and they feel each performance is a bit different, and you can gauge, you know how they're going to feel about a certain thing. But when I do Wilfred, like I did feel like I knew my audience even before the show had gone to air, and there were times where I'd shoot certain scenes in particular that I knew would just get them in the heart. Like I knew that I had them with the comedy, and this is just going to rip it out. Oh, they're going to feel a certain thing.
Yeah.
And I'd come off, I'd take my suit off, and I'd feel it. And I'm like, oh, you think they're going to this, and then years later, I haven't seen the show since I did it. The way I experience it now is through other people's memories, and they tell me their favorite bits, and I'm like, yeah. And I just go, isn't that funny? Like they're talking about how they felt this certain thing, and it's like, yeah, I felt it with you before you saw it.
Yeah.
So the time ceases to exist in a way. The relationship between me and the audience still happened, and it's still happening.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. I didn't do theater, but I did do stand-up comedy. And so I became very used to that instant reaction, right? And so when I got into broadcast, there's not an instant there. It's going out over the air, and maybe they like it, maybe they don't. I don't know until somebody says something. But over the years, much like yourself, the boomerang, the echoes come back in. And you go, wow, that really did reach somebody. It really did matter to someone, and that's a real validating feeling to know that you mattered to somebody. Well, you did the work you did, the words you used, the choices you made mattered. They really, really mattered in a more substantive way than any dollar or building or car could ever deliver to you. You know what I mean? And so that's awesome. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, look, let me do this, because I know you have other things to do. You have a family, you have a life. So if people want to know more about you, they want to know more about your CBD, they want to know more about your documentary, where do they need to go, Jason? Tell them where to go.
Well, I guess the first place to always see what I'm doing is at Wilfred on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm most active there. When it comes to the brand, wilfredcbd.com. At wilfredcbd.com, there's a contact area. It's like a mailing list. And I've kind of I'm shadow brand, I don't know, 3 different levels by now, because I'm pretty open about the cannabis stuff there, and I'm constantly so I know that I'm like only reach when my content's only reaching a very small percentage of my followers, but they can follow me still on there, such at Wilfred at Instagram, Wilfred TV Dog on Facebook, but the reliable one is wilfredcbd.com. Join my contact list, join my mailing list, and that way, if all my sites get shut down, you'll always be on the Wilfred mailing list, and anything important not there.
Yeah, I think that's great, man. And I know that my audience in particular is right in the wheelhouse of your demographic. They're the folks who, are going to embrace not only, the CBD and all of that, but I think they'll really embrace the documentary and the show and the journey that you're on. That's who my people are. And so I'm hopeful that we'll deliver you a lot of new fans, in addition to re-energizing some other fans as well, Well,
we are, as part of the film, plan to spend a bit of time in Tennessee, visiting the Chattanooga, where our grow is and fulfillment center.
Yeah, that's great.
Also, as part of the journey in the cannabis code, it does follow my journey a little bit, and that did lead me into Nashville. And also we really talk about dig into music and that kind of creative divergent thought meeting cannabis, meeting creativity, and how many musicians believe that even just the process of creating music, they often describe it as the music went through them and they were like a channel of music. It's coming from some higher place. So it really does fit in with that spirituality of cannabis and stuff. So we did plan to spend a bit of time in Nashville, which is kind of near your neck of the
It is near me. Yeah.
close, a lot closer than here anyway.
Yes.
So, like when we're there, it'd be great to, come back on the show again if you'll have me and give you an update.
Absolutely. And maybe by then, if things are going well, maybe I could even pop over there and, do a little impromptu show and kind of promote what you're doing and talk about it. And that'd be a fun journey to do, I think.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, yes, let's stay in touch, and certainly any way that we can help you get your message out and help continue to get the good words out that you want to get out to people and help them and make them more whole. We want to be part of that journey too, so we're thankful for what you're doing, and we see what you're doing, and we're here for you.
Thank you, Patrick.
You bet, man.
The whole team.
Hey, man, we're fans here. I'll tell you that, sir. We're fans, Jason. Thank you so much, man. Have a great night, buddy.
Thank you. You too, man.
All right, man.
Good night. Bye, Patrick.
That was great, man.